Hello and welcome back to an episode of Generation Films. My name is American Ben and today we are going to break down the 10 best ways to defeat the Necrons. Yes, you heard that right, and I know how ridiculous the suggestion that the Necrons can be defeated, let alone in 10 ways, sounds. And if you don't know why that sounds ridiculous, then please watch the video I did a few months ago in which I debated whether or not the Necrons are too overpowered. Anyway, yes, it's ridiculous to suggest that the Necrons can be defeated in a litany of ways. But we are doing this how to defeat different sci-fi faction series on our channel right now. British Ben just started with the Borg, and at some point we're gonna have to cover the Necrons. And so I figured, why not get out ahead of things and make them the first 40k Xeno race we attempt to bring down? Indeed, this video is going to be tricky, so the 10 ways I list here are going to be more an analysis of the pros and cons of different strategies for taking on the Necrons, rather than a bunch of surefire prescriptions for defeating them. Just one other note as well before we begin. I know that some of you who play the tabletop game have beaten the Necrons many times before. However, we can't take tabletop strategies into account because honestly, what happens on the table doesn't always jibe with the lore. Which is fair, by the way, because in practice, having the Necrons be as powerful as the lore claims they are would ruin the point of the game. Thus, we're sticking to the lore for this video, plus I don't know anything about the tabletop game, though that's not to say that nothing here will serve you well in the tabletop game. Anyway, without further ado, here are 10 ways to defeat the Necrons. But first, do you want to bludgeon your boss to death using all sorts of blunt objects? Oh, no, not in real life. I mean your dungeon boss in Raid Shadow Legends, the sponsor of today's video, silly. Raid has dozens of horrible bosses, as it were, but don't worry, because unlike in real life, you can kill these bosses using a variety of glorious champions in order to wreak obscene violence and brutality on them. And if you want me to shut the heck up already, go ahead, use my links down below to download Raid to your mobile phone or PC. When picking a faction to use in the game, the Bannerlords are a pretty popular choice as its champions are basically medieval knights. That said, I'm all about the knightly code and chivalrous sentiments of all sorts, but sorry, I just can't support them. Truth be told, I have elven blood and the Bannerlords just launched a war against the High Elves. Anyway, if you do go with the Bannerlords, you'll have to lead the fight in this brutal war using the faction's champions, all of whom look awesome. Save for maybe Sir Jason over here, who apparently missed the fashion memo and went with serial killer chic. Nonetheless, no matter which faction you pick, Raid's gameplay is always tons of fun. Battling the demonic hordes across the game's world and leveling up your champions is an addictive thrill ride. And of course, Raid is always getting bigger and better with each new update. This month, the game is releasing a bunch of new content, including 11 champions and almost 200 missions, which, if you complete all of them, will reward you with an exclusive legendary champion. And the new content doesn't stop there. Raid's creators have just added 5 tough new levels to almost every single dungeon in the game. So go kill some bosses. In Raid Shadow Legends, of course, it's never been easier or more worth your time to download the game. So do so using my links down below. I'll see you in Teleria. Method number 1, wrist control. Gain wrist control. Just kidding, their wrists can phase out of your grasp. The real number 1, innovation. No, this isn't a strategy in and of itself, but we can't go any further in this video without discussing human technological shortcomings in 40k. Perhaps the greatest threat to the human empire in the 40k universe is the fact that the Imperium's technology has been stagnant for thousands of years. The Adeptus Mechanicus has no idea how the weapons and tech in the Imperium's employ works. They just know that it does. Sometimes. And so it's silly of me to even try to have a discussion about taking on the Necrons in combat if the Imperium doesn't figure out a way to spur innovation throughout its domain. Necron ships are incredibly capable. They can transport themselves to anywhere in the galaxy in an instant using their inertialess drives, and are outfitted with a stunningly powerful array of energy weapons. Then on the ground, the Necrons also carry the most advanced gear known in the Milky Way galaxy. Their Gauss weapons break apart the atomic bonds of their targets on impact. And that's nothing. They have weapons like the Ionic Orb, which is basically a star bomb. And then if that's not enough, they have the Catan Star Gods. Watch the previous video I did on the Necrons if you need a breakdown of what these are, but shorthand, the Necrons have space Pokemon, all at the level of Mewtwo or better. So again, it's a huge problem that the Imperium's technology isn't improving at a significant rate because the difference between their tech and that of certain Xeno races is staggering. Method number 2, don't fight them. Yeah, I know that this prescription makes it sound like there's no point to this video, but I'm serious. I want to make an accurate list here. I don't want to just come up with cool answers for the sake of telling you what you want to hear. Did you not listen to that preview I just offered of all the godlike weapons the Necrons have at their disposal? Oh, not enough to scare you? Well, they can also phase. Yeah, as I alluded to earlier, the Necrons can just teleport to destinations in space-time as they wish. So really, any sensible strategy for defeating them would not include taking them on in battle. The humans would lose that fight easily. I know that some people actually point to Necron battle tactics as a weakness, as their strategies are somewhat predictable and uncreative. But my question to the people who raise this point is, what's the endgame? How exactly does this bode well for humans trying to emerge victorious in battle versus the Necrons? You can predict their tactics all day, but they're still going to win. The dynamic I'm trying to describe here is akin to how pretty people sometimes don't develop the best sense of humor because they simply don't need to be funny in order to get by in life. So yeah, think about it. The Necrons can probably defeat any faction in 40k in head-to-head battle, maybe even any faction in all of science fiction. Method number 3 is keep them asleep. As you may know, tens of millions of years ago, after wiping out the Old Ones and enslaving the Catan in an epic galactic god war, the Necrons were collectively depleted, and so they erected tomb worlds throughout the galaxy and hibernated there for 60 million years, waiting out better days. Now obviously it's nearly impossible for the humans to force the Necrons to stay asleep. Though what I can advise is that humans should take more care to watch out for tomb worlds as they navigate the galaxy. It's predicted that many settled human worlds actually house dormant Necrons beneath their surface, and thus the peoples living there stand a chance of disturbing them from their slumber. Humans should thus take precautions when founding new worlds, and possibly even try to develop tech that enables them to detect a Necron presence within a planet's crust. Crust. This brings us to method number 4. Destroy Necron tomb worlds. The Necrons are heavily dependent on their tomb worlds, not just for hibernation and recuperation, but also because they use them as grounds to repair their weapons and technology. The Imperium could take a shot at this strategy. They could locate as many tomb worlds as possible where Necrons are dormant, and then in a sweeping operation bombard them all into oblivion. If successful, I imagine the Necrons would find themselves in collective disrepair. However, this method is more of a suggestion I've seen offered up by Imperial subjects on the Emperor's interwebs, rather than one I'd advocate for myself. Why am I against this strategy? Well, it poses too big of a risk. I have confidence that humans could blow up these planets, but one mistake could mean the extinction of humanity. And a mistake is likely because it's not like the Necrons have left their tomb worlds unguarded. On the contrary, they are defended by all sorts of hellish wraiths and robots that alone could deal devastating outcomes unto humanity. So it's not like an Imperial Navy battle fleet could just pull up on a tomb world and lay it to waste unimpeded. And again, this strategy could very well lead to the already stupendously powerful Necrons waking up grumpy. And this brings us to method number 5. Trap them. As we've discussed already, the Necrons are not surmountable in a head-to-head fight. They have all the weapons, tech, abilities, and Pokemon we mentioned earlier, and additionally, they're kind of immortal, so attempting to kill them is a fairly futile endeavor. Simply said, they don't bleed their own blood. Back during their war with the Old Ones, the Catan transformed the Necrontyrs' bodies into machines made up of necrodermis, a living metal that is nearly immune to damage and can heal and regenerate when damaged. Necrons can actually reassemble themselves after having been reduced to atoms, so no go on turning their Gauss weapons on them. But I digress. Killing the Necrons off is not a feasible strategy, but figuring out a way to trap and sedate them is a more promising idea. What the Imperium could do is attempt to study an abandoned tomb world, if there is one out there, and from what they learn, perhaps attempt to fashion some sort of Necron tomb of their own, within which they can imprison captured Necrons and put them to sleep. Now, the problem with this plan is that it'd be hard to pull off on a significant number of Necrons. And then, of course, if the humans are successful in imprisoning a good amount of them, the brethren of the captured may become, to use layman's terms, pissed off. And then finally, in the first place, if the humans can't even figure out their own tech, I'm not sure how they're going to be able to grasp what the Necrons have going on. Next up is method number 6. Use the Force. Nope, wait, sorry. Vaccine delirium is kicking in. That's use the warp. The Necrons would eat the Jedi alive. One of the Necrons' biggest advantages, aside from, well, everything, is the fact that they don't have to traverse the warp to achieve FTL travel, as they have the mysterious inertialess drives installed on their ships that we mentioned earlier. It stands to reason that if no form of organic life can defeat the Necrons, then perhaps it's best to turn to the ethereal entities of the warp. Actually, this is probably our best strategy yet. If the Imperium can somehow lead the Necrons into the warp, which isn't so unthinkable given the warp's spread across the galaxy, then it's possible to wipe them out. The trick here is galvanizing enough of the Necrons to fall for the trap to make a dent in their ranks, so the humans are probably going to have to do this during some sort of large-scale invasion, preferably at the beginning of hostilities before the Imperium suffers mass casualties. Though, this is 40k, so let's not pretend like that really matters. Of course, as the Necrons don't ever enter the warp, chances are they won't fare too well in there. As crazy as it sounds, humans may actually have an advantage on the Necrons in Immaterium because they have some experience in this demonic realm. Additionally, humans employ the use of Psykers to navigate the warp, whereas Necrons have no native Psykers. While I don't think this shortcoming makes much of a difference for Necrons in real space, in the warp they would find themselves in trouble without a psychic guide. Next, method number 7 is goad the Necrons into internecine conflict. Despite their collective power, the Necron Empire is highly fractured. Following the self-exile of Zarek, the Necron Silent King and former ruling triarch of the ancient Necrontyr Empire, the state of the Necron power hierarchy fell into disorder as Zarek left no clear line of succession with his abdication. Thus, a struggle persists among Necron dynasties and nobles to claim power over the Necron Empire. I think most Imperial scholars will tell you that if push comes to shove, the Necrons will unite. But it's not so far-fetched to think that external forces could manipulate them into civil war, especially given how individualistic Necron nobles are. Thus, this method may be a viable strategy for decimating the Necron ranks. However, I think this is a bad idea for the same reason that on Earth today it wouldn't necessarily be desirable for the government of major powers, or any powers really, to collapse, even if the government in question is generally viewed as malicious and averse to international norms. The chaos caused by such a collapse could lead to worse outcomes for the rest of the world than if said government were to remain stable. If the Necrons fell to civil war, what power structure does exist among their empire could collapse, and the various deadly weapons they possess could fall into the wrong hands, or worse, the Necrons could simply start unleashing said firepower on each other. After all, what else should we expect of a Necron-on-Necron war? In a war amongst Titans, the Titans aren't going to be careful to not obliterate weaker races that come into the crossfire. Thus, the Imperium should hope that a Necron civil war never comes to pass, for the effects could be catastrophic for the galaxy. Next, method number 8 is turn the Necrons' weapons against them. This is another strategy I've seen proposed by Imperial subjects around the Milky Way wide web. I don't mean to suggest that humans should try to wield Gauss weapons. Instead, what I'm looking to exploit is the fact that the Necrons actually don't have total control over their so-called arms. The Catan Star Gods, for instance, are likely not happy to be enslaved by the Necrons, and given the chance would probably break free and launch an uprising against them. The Necrons also employ armies of robots as well, which too pose a threat of rebellion. And Necron robots are not like any other machines in the galaxy. They're nearly as deadly as the Necrons themselves. Thus, if these robots and the Catan could be freed from servitude and set upon their masters, well, we may have a decent fight on our hands. Once again, though, the issue is with the chaos that would result and come to affect humans as well. After defeating the Necrons, the Catan Star Gods could go on to conquer the galaxy or even destroy it. This brings us to method number 9, Tyranids. This is another popular strategy for defeating the Necrons that I've seen around His Holiness's internet. Unleash the swarm on them. Now, I know that some people believe that the Tyranids can actually rival the Necrons in battle, especially because the Necrons' infantry units move kind of slow and predictably on the ground. You know, until they phase to wherever they want. Yeah, let me respond to the idea that the Tyranids can beat the Necrons in battle. No. Sorry, the Necrons would destroy the Tyranids if we're obeying the lore. However, that's not to say that the Tyranids couldn't serve as a distraction for the Necrons. As the swarm sixths its overwhelming and actually infinite numbers on the Necrons, the humans could move in for a strike. That said, this disobeys our earlier prescription to never fight the Necrons. Eventually, the Necrons would stave off the Tyranids, at least until the next horde rises, and then destroy the humans who bothered them. And anyway, what if the Tyranids did defeat the Necrons? Fresh on the heels of that epic victory, they'd overrun the galaxy. Again, this method would be set hell on everyone. Or not hell, because that actually exists in 40k, but a bad outcome. Finally, we have method number 10, seize the Celestial Orrery. Yes, we have to consider the Necrons' ultimate weapon here. And this is just a reminder of how OP the Necrons are. Their star bombs and god shards aren't even their best weapons. The Celestial Orrery, located on the planet Thanatos, where it is overseen by the Necron-Orusker dynasty, is basically a hologram of the entire galaxy. And when the Necrons alter a spot on this hologram, the spot's corresponding location in real space changes in accordance with the alteration. In other words, this is the Necrons' Play God device. By flicking a spot on the orrery, it can cause a star to go supernova. Or, you know, they can just destroy entire star systems in an instant. Thus, if the humans focus a surprise attack on the Erusker dynasty, well, they could use the orrery to wipe out all of the Necrons in the galaxy before the Necron armies could react. That said, here's my question. Is it a good idea for humans to control the orrery? Wouldn't we rather have a more powerful race like the Necrons oversee it? After all, the Necrons have seemingly been fairly restrained when it comes to the orrery. It's hard to tell if they've used it or not, but certainly they haven't used it to wipe out humanity. Therefore, the orrery may be safer in their hands. What would happen if humans controlled it and the orcs attacked the location the orrery was being housed in and successfully took it over? They'd probably just start randomly mashing buttons. Put aside the fact that humans themselves may not even be as restrained as the Necrons when it comes to using the orrery, they simply aren't strong enough to be able to oversee it safely. Anyway, those are 10 ways to beat the Necrons. There's no truly viable method on this list, but as I said earlier, I wanted to make an accurate video, and even still, I hope that you found some of these strategies to be creative. Anyway, that's the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please do give it a big thumbs up. Let me know down in the comments below what you think of all of these strategies. Remember to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell so you don't miss a damn thing. Thanks again to Raid for sponsoring this video. For now, my name is American Ben, and I'll catch you next time. Generation Films, peace.